The military compound was buzzing with gossip. Rumor had it that Luke, the youngest living Grim Reaper, who had just returned from a near-fatal overseas deployment, was going to marry a daughter of the Miller family. Everyone assumed the lucky girl would be Sarah, the Miller's biological daughter with a flawless background and the youngest lead surgeon at the Military General Hospital. But at the dinner table, her father, Robert, put on airs and publicly announced the arrangement. He was giving the marriage to her younger sister, Emily. For a moment, Sarah actually laughed out loud. Fine. If Emily wanted this sudden stroke of luck and wealth, she could have it. Ever since Emily had stepped foot in the house, whether it was Sarah's bedroom, her university quota, or the belongings left behind by her late mother, her father had forced Sarah to give up whatever Emily asked for. Now, she even had to give up a man. It didn't matter. Today, she would give up this father and this so-called family altogether. But her dear father probably didn't know that when Luke's family specifically asked for a Miller daughter, they were never after his pathetic sense of pride. Hey guys, what would you do if your dad forced you to give your fiancé to your sister? Today we watch Sarah, a brilliant doctor, stop compromising and walk away with a plot twist that leaves everyone in shock. Let's dive in. Sarah. Emily is physically weak and has a soft personality. This marriage is the best possible destination for her. You are the older sister, and you're also a military doctor. You need to have a higher level of awareness and be more accommodating, Robert said, clearing his throat at the dinner table and delivering his speech with absolute self-righteousness. Sitting across from Sarah, Emily lowered her eyes at exactly the right moment, exposing her slender, fragile neck. Her voice was as thin as a mosquito's hum. Dad, if my sister isn't willing, let's just forget it. How could I steal her marriage? Sarah had watched this manipulative, playing the victim act for 20 years, and she was completely sick of it. She ignored Emily and simply looked calmly at her father. So, your decision is to have Emily marry Luke? The name Luke was a legend throughout the entire military base. At 27, he possessed an illustrious military record. Relying on a reckless, death-defying ruthlessness, he had forcefully carved a bloody path out of the most dangerous battlefields to become the youngest Special Forces captain. Such a golden boy, the dream lover of countless young women from prominent families, was now going to be the prospective son-in-law of the Miller family. Everyone thought this marriage was destined to be Sarah's. After all, she and Luke's grandfather were close friends despite their age gap, and her father was a civilian leader in the military district. By all logic and reason, it should have been her. But now, her father was personally handing this incredible windfall over to his adopted daughter. Robert was momentarily choked by Sarah's blunt question. His face fell slightly, and he hardened his tone. This is an order, and it's also for your own good. Luke has a cold personality and a heavy, murderous aura. If you marry him, you might not be happy. Emily is gentle and submissive. They will perfectly complement each other. Heh! Sarah let out a low chuckle. It was always like this. For the sake of his pathetic reputation of being fair and impartial, and for his inexplicable sense of guilt, she had to yield everything. Emily had been brought home by her father 8 years ago. He claimed she was the orphan child of a fallen comrade. From the day she walked through the door, Sarah's life was forced into a state of constant concession. She gave up her largest bedroom. When it came to a guaranteed admission spot to the military medical university, her father urged Sarah to take the entrance exam on her own merit, giving the quota to Emily, whose academic foundation was poor. Even the only memento Sarah's mother had left her an incredibly valuable necklace was tearfully borrowed by Emily to attend a banquet, only for her to accidentally lose it. Her father always had the exact same excuse. You are the older sister. Let her have it. And now, even her marriage had to be yielded. Looking at Robert's face, which was practically plastered with the words, "I'm doing this for your own good," Sarah suddenly found it all incredibly comical. Fine, I'll let her have it, she replied decisively, yielding without a second thought. Everyone at the table was stunned. Robert frowned, seemingly trying to gauge the truth in her words. Emily raised her head in even greater surprise, a flash of unconcealed ecstasy darting through her eyes. Sarah picked up her chopsticks, took the last bite of her food, and swallowed it slowly. Then, she set down her bowl and chopsticks, wiping her mouth with a napkin. I yield this marriage. And not just the marriage, this family, and my identity as the older sister, I yield it all to her. She stood up, her gaze sweeping past her father's shocked face and Emily's secretly delighted expression. From today onward, I, Sarah Miller, have nothing to do with your Miller family. You can keep him as a father, all to yourself. Without giving them another glance, she turned and went back to her room, dragging out the suitcase she had prepared long ago. She had had enough of this for years. Through her own hard work, she had gotten into the military medical university, completed her master's and doctorate degrees consecutively, and entered the military general hospital at a young age to become an independent lead surgeon. Everything she had was earned by her own hands. It had absolutely nothing to do with the Miller family. Her father thought he held everything she cared about in his grip, but he had no idea she had been wanting to leave for a long time. From the living room came Robert's exasperated, furious roar. "You've lost your mind. If you dare walk out that door, don't ever acknowledge me as your father again." Her footsteps didn't stop. Instead, she pulled the front door open. "Acknowledge you as a father? Maybe in the next life." Only, her dear father and her dear sister would probably never know that Luke's grandfather had specifically asked for the Miller granddaughter who knew first aid and had a scar on her wrist to be his grandson's wife. What he valued was never Robert's pathetic pride, but the fact that 5 years ago, in the rubble of the Wenchuan earthquake, she had saved a dying young soldier, and that soldier was Luke. She had just reached the gate of the courtyard with her suitcase when a blinding beam of headlights suddenly flashed over. A military off-road vehicle with special license plates came to a steady stop right in front of her house. The car door opened, and a man in a crisp military uniform with fresh insignias on his shoulders stepped out. His gaze was sharp as a falcon's, looking straight at her. It wasn't Luke. It was Luke's most capable adjutant, Carter. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Why were they here now? Carter's appearance made the entire Miller family compound fall dead silent. Robert hurried out from the house, chasing after her. Upon seeing Carter, the trace of anger on his face vanished without a trace in an instant, replaced by a warm, eager smile. "Oh my, if it isn't Adjutant Carter, what wind blew you here? Please, come in, come in." But Carter didn't move. His gaze bypassed her father and landed on the suitcase by her hand, his brow twitching almost imperceptibly. "Commissar Miller, we are here under the orders of Commander Ford and the old master of Luke's family to deliver the engagement gifts to the future young madam." His tone was strictly businesslike, yet it carried the unique, oppressive weight of a seasoned soldier. "Young madam?" Robert froze for a moment, then, his face splitting into a wide smile, he pulled Emily out from behind him. "Oh, of course, of course!" "Emily, quick, say hello to Adjutant Carter." Emily stepped forward bashfully and called out in a timid, sweet voice, "Hello, Adjutant Carter." Carter's eyes lingered on her face for less than a second before shifting away, completely devoid of any emotional fluctuation. He stepped to the side, and the guard behind him immediately presented an exquisite velvet box. This was specially prepared by the old master for the young madam. "Please take a look." Robert's eyes lit up. He hastily took it and opened the box right in front of everyone. Inside was not some priceless jewelry, but a ring hand-polished from a bullet casing. The shape was rough and bold, yet it carried a unique kind of refinement. Next to the ring lay quietly a small bird woven from willow twigs. The craftsmanship was extremely rough, even a bit crooked. The air in the courtyard seemed to freeze. Everyone could tell that the bullet casing ring might hold a special meaning. But what was the deal with this willow twig bird? Robert's smile froze on his face. That was when Carter's gaze turned to Emily, his voice flat and emotionless. "The commander said this is the token between him and the future young madam. Only the real one will recognize it." Emily's face instantly drained of color. She looked at the willow bird, panic in her eyes, her lips trembling for a long time without being able to utter a single word. Of course, she didn't recognize it. 5 years ago, in the rubble plagued by constant aftershocks, that young soldier named Luke had been hit in the back and legs by a precast concrete slab while trying to protect a child beneath him. When Sarah found him, he was already fading fast. During the 10+ hours of waiting for rescue, in order to keep him awake, Sarah had continuously talked to him while treating his wounds. Trembling all over from the pain, he had casually snapped off a nearby willow twig, clumsily woven this weird-looking bird, and handed it to her, saying, "When I get out of here, I will definitely find you and repay you." At the time, she just took it as his delirious rambling and casually accepted it. She never expected him to remember it all this time. Now, this willow bird had become the sharp blade that pierced through all the lies. Looking at Emily's pale face and her father's embarrassed expression, Sarah felt no satisfaction in her heart. She only found it absurd. "Dad, it seems my sister can't handle this blessing after all." Sarah spoke lightly, breaking the suffocating silence. Robert whipped his head around and glared at her, his eyes full of warning. "Sarah, this has nothing to do with you. Haven't you caused enough trouble?" He then turned back to explain to Carter. "Adjutant Carter, please don't misunderstand. Emily is..." She's just a bit too overwhelmed right now and forgot. You know how girls are, they have thin skin. Saying this, he gave Emily a harsh shove. Hurry up and speak. Tell Adjutant Carter the origin of these items. Emily's tears fell like pearls from a broken string, pitter-pattering down as she wept pitifully. I can't remember, I'm sorry. Useless! Robert cursed under his breath in anger. Sarah didn't want to watch this farce any longer. She grabbed her suitcase and turned to leave. Halt! Carter suddenly spoke up, stopping her. Sarah paused her steps but didn't look back. She only heard his steady voice sounding behind her. Miss, is your wrist injured? She subconsciously looked down at her right wrist. The hand that wielded a scalpel year-round was fair and steady, but on the inner side of the wrist, there was a scar that had faded to the point of being nearly invisible. It was from being cut by a protruding piece of rebar in the rubble back then. This was a scar Emily did not have. Sarah took a deep breath, grabbed her suitcase, and walked out of the military compound's gates without looking back. Behind her were Robert's exasperated shouts and Emily's suppressed sobbing. And then there was Carter's meaningful remark echoing from afar. Commissar Miller, it seems we've made a mistake. The person we are looking for does not appear to be your adopted daughter. Sarah had her own small apartment near the Military General Hospital. It wasn't big, but it was quiet enough. Leaving the Miller family behind, she felt no lingering attachment at all. Instead, she felt a sense of relief, as if breaking free from shackles. Early the next morning, Sarah threw herself into her intense work just like usual. As a lead surgeon, the operating table was her battlefield. A complex tumor removal surgery that lasted for 8 hours drained all her energy. When she dragged her exhausted body out of the operating room, the head nurse hurried over. Dr. Miller, your phone is about to explode from ringing. Sarah took her phone. There were dozens of missed calls on the screen, all from Robert. She simply muted it and tossed it into her locker. Oh, right, Dr. Miller, the head nurse added. A VIP came to the hospital today. He's from the Special Forces. They say he's injured and specifically requested you as his attending physician. Sarah frowned. Who is it? I think his name is Luke. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. After changing her clothes, she walked into the VIP ward. The man was leaning back on the hospital bed, shirtless. He exposed well-defined muscles and a crisscross of old and new scars, brimming with a wild, untamed tension. He was reading a document, his expression focused, radiating a chilling aura that warned strangers to keep their distance. Hearing the door open, he looked up. The moment their eyes met, the air in the entire room seemed to freeze. It was him. He was more mature and sharper than he had been 5 years ago. Those deep eyes were like a cold abyss hiding a sea of stars, capable of pulling someone in with a single glance. Dr. Miller, he spoke first. His voice was deep, magnetic, and carried a barely perceptible rasp. Sarah suppressed the turbulent emotions in her heart, stepped forward, and picked up the medical chart at the head of his bed. She asked in a strictly professional tone, "Where are you feeling uncomfortable?" "Here." He reached out a well-knuckled finger and tapped his left shoulder. There was a wound there that had its stitches removed not long ago. It was healing well, but the surrounding skin was slightly red and swollen. Tore an old injury during training. "It's a bit infected," he said concisely. Sarah put on her gloves and leaned over to carefully examine his wound. Being so close, she could clearly smell the faint scent of gunpowder on him, mixed with a clean soap fragrance, completely exuding masculine hormones. Her fingertips gently pressed the skin around his wound as she asked, "Does it hurt?" "I'm all right." Even though he said he was all right, she could feel the muscles in his shoulder instantly tense up. "Stubborn," she muttered in a low voice, picking up a cotton swab and antiseptic to start cleaning his wound. Her movements were very light and highly professional. He didn't speak the whole time, he just quietly watched her. His gaze was so penetrating that it made her slightly uncomfortable. "Don't move around," she reminded him. He suddenly spoke, his voice very low. "Your hands are very steady. Occupational habit." "Doesn't seem like it." He paused, then enunciated word by word, more like it was trained on a battlefield. Sarah's hand suddenly jerked, and a drop of alcohol from the sterilizing cotton swab fell onto his wound. He hissed slightly but didn't dodge. Instead, he grabbed her wrist. His palm was broad and warm, bearing rough, thin calluses. It clamped shut on her pulse like an iron vise. Following his line of sight, her gaze landed on that shallow scar on the inner side of her wrist. "This scar," he trailed off, his thumb lightly stroking the scar as his eyes deepened. "How did you get it?" Sarah violently yanked her hand back, her mind a tangled mess. No comment. She threw down the cotton swab, turned around, and was about to leave. "Sarah," he called out to her, his voice carrying an unquestionable power. The person under the Wenchuan rubble 5 years ago was you, wasn't it? Sarah froze in place, her back straight as a board. Admit it or deny it? If she admitted it, it would be equivalent to tacitly acknowledging that she was the person Luke's family was looking for. Then the farce between her and the Miller family would completely become a joke. If she didn't admit it, she couldn't deceive him, nor could she deceive herself. The hospital room was terrifyingly quiet. She could even hear her own heartbeat pounding against her ribs. Luke didn't press her further, he just quietly watched her back. After a long time, Sarah turned around, meeting his bottomless eyes. She twitched the corners of her mouth and said, "Captain Luke, I think you've made a mistake. I am just a doctor, not some savior." "Is that so?" He chuckled lightly. The laughter carried a hint of understanding and a bit of playfulness. "Then do you recognize this?" He took something out from under his pillow. It was a small bird woven from woodstolo twigs, exactly the same as the one Carter had brought out in the courtyard of her house. Only this one was newer, still carrying the fresh scent of willow twigs. Sarah's pupils shrank suddenly. "Back then, I didn't have time to ask your name. I only knew you were a medical student, and your wrist had been cut by a piece of rebar." Luke's voice was deep, as if he were recounting a distant story. "My grandfather wanted to repay you, so he proposed marriage to the Miller family. He only knew the Miller family had a daughter of marriageable age who was a doctor, but he didn't know they had 2 daughters. He looked at her, his gaze burning. My parents passed away early, and it was my grandfather who raised me. I cannot fail to fulfill his wish. However, my wife must be someone I choose myself." "So?" Sarah asked, forcing herself to calm down. "So, Dr. Sarah Miller." He sat up straight, the aura around him instantly becoming sharp and imposing. "Are you willing to give me a chance to repay you?" How was this repaying? It was clearly a proposal. Looking at his face, which was written all over with seriousness, Sarah suddenly found it a bit funny. "Captain Luke, do you think this is appropriate? You just got engaged to my sister 1 second, and the next second you're coming after me. If word gets out, what would people think of me? What would they think of you?" "I don't care what others think." His answer was crisp and clean. "I only care about how you see it." "My view?" Sarah laughed self-deprecatingly. "My view is this. Do you people who sit high and mighty all like to play with other people's fates in the palms of your hands? First, it was Robert using the excuse of doing it for my own good to make me yield everything to Emily. Now it's you, trying to decide the rest of my life based on some old debt of gratitude. Luke, what gives you the right?" Her voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear, carrying a long-suppressed anger and grievance. The atmosphere in the hospital room instantly dropped to the freezing point. Luke's expression shifted slightly. He hadn't expected her to react this way. He remained silent for a moment before saying in a deep voice, "I never wanted to play with your fate. I just want to take responsibility for you." "Take responsibility?" Sarah reacted as if she had just heard the biggest joke in the world. "Take responsibility for an accidental rescue? Captain Luke, have you been watching too many military dramas? I saved you because I wear this white coat. It's my duty. If it were anyone else, I would have done the exact same thing." "That's different," he said stubbornly. "There is nothing different," she interrupted him. "Put away your chauvinistic gratitude act. I don't need it. As for the engagement, just treat it as a massive misunderstanding. Your family can go look for whoever you want. Just don't bother me." After saying that, she picked up the medical chart and flamboyantly signed her name on it. "Your wound is fine. Just change the dressing on time. I have another surgery, so I'll be going," Sarah said. She turned around, not wanting to linger for a single extra step. When she reached the door, his voice, suppressing anger, came from behind her. "Sarah, you will regret this." She tightened her grip on the doorknob but didn't look back. "Regret? I never make decisions in my life that I will regret." Sarah had thought that by making things clear, Luke would realize the difficulty and back off. She didn't expect to have underestimated his stubbornness or, rather, the sheer action-oriented drive of a special forces captain. From that day on, her life was invaded by him from all directions, without a single blind spot. In the morning, a military jeep would appear exactly on time downstairs at her apartment building, with a piping hot breakfast waiting inside. At noon, under the guise of having his wound checked, he would show up at her office without fail, bringing along a nutritionally balanced lunch. At night, no matter how late she worked overtime, the moment she walked out of the hospital gates, she could always see him leaning against his car waiting for her, his silhouette stretched out long under the streetlights. The gossip in the hospital had already gone crazy. "Did you hear? That god of war, Luke, is chasing our Dr. Miller? For real? Wasn't he going to marry the Miller family's adopted daughter?" That blew up a long time ago. The real deal is our Dr. Miller. What do they call this? An overbearing war hero's desperate pursuit of love. Sarah was getting a massive headache from all this gossip. She emphasized to Luke over and over again not to bother her anymore. Every time, he would agree perfectly. Okay, I won't bother you. But the very next day, he would show up on time, as if nothing had happened. She was practically going crazy from his shameless guerrilla warfare tactics. One day, she had just finished a surgery when she received a call from Robert. His voice sounded exhausted and furious. Come back here immediately. She originally wanted to hang up, but he roared, It's about your mother's belongings. Sarah's heart sank, and she still returned to that so-called home. In the living room, both Robert and Emily were there. The atmosphere was oppressive. Emily's eyes were red and swollen, as if she had just been crying. So you still know how to come back, Robert snapped the moment he saw her. Sarah couldn't be bothered to entertain him. She asked directly, Did you find my mother's necklace? The necklace Emily had lost back then was designed by her mother, one of a kind in the world. It was her last memento of her. Robert's face stiffened. Evading her question, he slammed a newspaper down in front of her. Look at the good deed you've done. Now the entire military district is saying that you stole your own sister's fiancé. You've completely disgraced the Miller family. On the society page of the newspaper, an article based on hearsay heavily embellished a love triangle between Sarah, Luke, and Emily, painting Sarah as a vicious woman who would stoop to any means to climb the social ladder. Now Luke's family has explicitly stated that they are canceling the engagement with Emily. Robert pointed at her nose and scolded, Are you satisfied now? Are you happy now that you've ruined Emily's happiness? Emily started sobbing on the side. Sister, I know you blame me, but how could you do this to me? I truly like Captain Luke. Watching the father and daughter echo each other, Sarah only felt disgusted. My dear father, get this straight. This marriage was a mistake from the very beginning. The person Luke's family was looking for was me, not her. Shut up! Robert trembled with anger. Even if they were looking for you, so what? You are still my daughter. I should be the one in charge of your marriage. Whoever I say it goes to, it goes to. Sarah sneered. What gives you the right? Is it your complete neglect of me all these years? Or is it because you forced me to concede time and time again, giving everything that belonged to me to her? Sarah pointed at Emily and asked Robert, enunciating every single word. Put your hand over your heart and tell me, over the years, have you done right by my mother? Have you done right by me? Robert was left completely speechless by her question, his face turning an ugly, dark purplish red. As for this necklace, Sarah unclasped the necklace from her neck and threw an identical one onto the table. I had a replica made a long time ago. I've always kept the real one safely on me. You. Robert stared at the two necklaces, too shocked to speak. I didn't come back today to listen to you lecture me. Sarah looked at him, her eyes as cold as ice. I'm only going to tell you one thing. You do not deserve to be a father. From this day forward, you go your way and I'll go mine. We owe each other absolutely nothing. After saying that, she took one last look at the house she had lived in for over 20 years, turned around, and walked out. This time, she didn't hesitate for a single second. Behind her came the loud crash of shattering porcelain and Robert's hysterical roars. But to Sarah, it felt as though dawn had finally broken. After completely cutting ties with the Miller family, she thought her life would return to peace. But Luke obviously didn't see it that way. Not only did he not back off, but he doubled down. That evening, just as she walked out of the hospital, he cornered her in the parking lot. Without giving her a chance to argue, he shoved her into his car, slammed on the gas, and the vehicle sped away. Luke, are you out of your mind? She yelled furiously. He didn't say a word, just drove incredibly fast until he finally parked by a secluded riverbank. He cut the engine, and the car fell into a dead silence. Sarah, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Marry me. In your dreams, she replied coldly. I'm not discussing this with you. He turned his head, his dark eyes strikingly bright in the night. I'm informing you. On what grounds? On these. He suddenly leaned in close, his warm breath fanning across her face. She subconsciously leaned back, only for her spine to hit the cold car door. However, he didn't lean in any closer. Instead, he pulled a small red booklet from his pocket and tossed it onto her lap. She opened it. It was his military ID, featuring a photo of him looking handsome and imposing. According to regulations, when a military officer applies for marriage, they must submit a report to their superiors, he said. My report was approved today. Sarah was stunned. Who did you list as your fiancé? Who do you think? He raised an eyebrow, a smile she couldn't quite read playing at the corners of his lips. The report says, Surgeon at the Military General Hospital, Sarah Miller. Her mind buzzed, going completely blank. You're crazy. I never agreed to this. You will, he stated with absolute certainty. No, I won't. Then do you want to see the evidence of your father's embezzlement and bribery? He dropped the sentence lightly, yet it exploded like a thunderclap in her ears. She jerked her head up, staring at him in sheer disbelief. What did you say? Luke pulled a manila envelope from the glove compartment and handed it to her. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a thick stack of documents and photographs. It was ironclad evidence of Robert abusing his position to grant favors to certain businessmen in exchange for massive bribes, case by case. Among them was the kickback he received for arranging a job for Emily's good-for-nothing relative. Sarah had always thought her father was just biased and foolish. She never expected him to actually go this far. Why would he do this? She muttered to herself. For money? Luke's voice was very cold. And to pave the way for Emily. She isn't you. She doesn't have your abilities. Robert wants to ensure she has a worry-free life, so he can only use this method to save up a dowry for her. How do you know all this? She asked. If I want to know something, there is nothing I can't find out. He looked at her, his eyes complex. Sarah, I originally didn't want to use this method, but I'm out of time. What do you mean? I am about to go on a new mission. Highly classified. The duration is uncertain, and it's a matter of life and death. His voice dropped lower. I have to secure you before I leave. I don't want you to be snatched away by someone else when I come back. Even more so, if I don't make it back, I don't want to leave you to face the Miller family's mess all alone. He held her hand, his gaze filled with a vulnerability and pleading she had never seen before. Marry me, Sarah. Let me give you a home. Let me protect you, okay? The river breeze blew in through the crack in the car window, messing up her hair. She looked at the marriage report in his hand, then at the obsession and deep affection in his eyes, her heart turning into a tangled mess. This man was overbearing, forceful, and even somewhat ruthless. Yet every word he said was like a heavy hammer smashing fiercely into her heart. Protect. She hadn't heard that word in a very long time. In the end, she still signed her name. It wasn't because of Robert's mess, nor was it because of his threat, but because of his words. I don't want you to be snatched away by someone else when I come back. In that instant, a crack formed in her hardened heart. They didn't hold a wedding ceremony. They just went to the military marriage registry to get their certificate. Holding the little red booklet in her hand, Sarah was still in a bit of a daze. Just like that? I'm married? Luke seemed to sense her He held her hand and said in a low voice, I've wronged you. When I get back, I will definitely make it up to you with the grandest wedding. She pulled her hand back and didn't say anything. He took her back to his residence in the military compound, a detached 2-story house located very close to his grandfather's place. The house was very clean, decorated in a minimalist, tough guy style, mostly black, white, and gray, lacking any sense of domestic warmth. From now on, this is our home, he said, placing the keys in her hand. Home. What a warm and incredibly luxurious word. I'm leaving the day after tomorrow. He looked at her as if he wanted to say more but hesitated. Milime? She nodded, indicating she understood. The atmosphere was somewhat heavy. He cleared his throat. After I leave, if you run into any trouble you can't solve, go find my grandfather. I've already spoken to him. Also, don't go back to the Miller family anymore. The disciplinary committee will handle Robert's matters. You don't need to get involved. Do you have enough money to spend? I'll give you my salary card. The password is your birthday. He rambled on like a husband about to travel far away, making sure everything was taken care of. Sarah listened quietly, a strange, warm current welling up in her heart. Luke, she interrupted him. Is your mission this time very dangerous? He froze for a moment, then smiled. It's fine. Just a routine mission. He was lying. She could tell the perilous nature of the mission from his flickering gaze. She wanted to say, you must come back safely, but the words reached her lips and she swallowed them back. They had just gotten married and weren't even considered familiar with each other. Wouldn't saying this be too overly sentimental? He seemed to see right through her thoughts. Stepping forward, he gently pulled her into his arms. His chest was hard, yet warm, carrying a reassuring strength. Wait for me to come back, he promised solemnly in her ear. That night, they slept in separate rooms. He slept in the guest room, leaving the master bedroom for her. Lying on the unfamiliar bed, smelling his clean, crisp scent on the quilt, she was sleepless all night. The next day, she saw him off at the military airport. Wearing a camouflage combat uniform and carrying a massive rucksack, he looked valiant and dashing. Right before leaving, he gave her a deep look, saying nothing, and simply gave her a crisp, standard military salute. Sarah stood in place, watching his back disappear at the boarding gate, feeling an emptiness in her heart. Amidst the deafening roar of the plane taking off, she instinctively pulled out her phone as if driven by some unseen force and sent him a message. "Stay safe. I will wait for you to come back." Only after it was successfully sent did she realize what she had done, her face growing slightly hot. Her phone quickly vibrated. It was his reply, just a few short words. "I will, wife." After Luke left, her life seemingly returned to peace, but some things were quietly changing. Robert was taken away by the disciplinary committee for investigation due to his embezzlement and bribery. He was quickly convicted and sentenced, and the Miller family completely collapsed. Having lost her only backing, Emily's life plummeted drastically. She came to the hospital to find Sarah time and time again, crying and begging for forgiveness, begging for her help. Sarah didn't see her a single time. It wasn't that she was heartless, but rather that Emily had chosen this path herself, so she had to bear the consequences on her own. One day, Sarah had just finished a surgery when she saw Luke's grandfather, the highly respected old general in the military, leaning on his cane and waiting at the door to her office. "Girl, I'm not bothering you, am I?" The old general smiled warmly, looking incredibly amiable. "Grandpa, why are you here?" She hurriedly helped him sit down. "Can I come see my granddaughter-in-law?" He looked her up and down, growing more satisfied the more he looked. "Similar. You really look just like your grandmother when she was young. Both of you are good girls with a mind of your own." "My grandmother?" Sarah was stunned. She only knew that her grandmother had passed away when she was very young, and she hadn't even seen many photos of her. "You knew my grandmother?" "More than just knew her." When the old master brought up the past, his eyes lit up. "We were comrades in arms in the same trench back in the day. Your grandmother was a battlefield rose with miraculous medical skills, saving who knows how many people. You, girl, definitely take after her." He pulled a yellowed, old photograph from his inside pocket. In the photo, a young woman wearing a white coat, looking valiant and heroic, was smiling brightly at the camera. Her facial features actually resembled Sarah's by 70 or 80%. "Back then, I chased after your grandmother too." The old master fell into his memories. "It's a pity your grandmother eventually chose your grandfather, that refined and gentle scholar. Later, after your grandmother passed away, our two families lost contact. That is, until 5 years ago, when that boy Luke came back from the earthquake disaster zone. He kept talking all day about a little doctor who saved him, and even drew a portrait of you. I took one look, and thought, hey, isn't this my old comrade's granddaughter? This destiny was ordained by heaven." Listening to the old master's words, Sarah's heart was churning with overwhelming waves of emotion. It turned out that she and Luke had such a deep-rooted connection. It turned out that his looking for her wasn't entirely just out of gratitude, but also carried a longing from their grandparents, transcending time and space. "Before that boy left, he specifically instructed me that I must take good care of you." The old master sighed. "This mission is not simple. He was afraid he might not." "He will come back," Sarah interrupted the old master's words, her tone firmer than ever before. "He promised me he would definitely come back." Once Luke left, 3 months passed without any news. Sarah went about her work and life methodically every day, but it felt as if a heavy stone was suspended in her heart. She began to develop the habit of checking her phone every night before bed, hoping to see a message from him, and she also got used to subconsciously taking a second look whenever she saw an olive green off-road vehicle. She even started studying world maps, guessing which corner of the globe he might be executing his mission in. She told herself that this was just because they were legally married. She was simply fulfilling her duties as a wife. But she could deceive others. She couldn't deceive her own heart. Yearning grew wildly in her heart like vines. One day, a massive mudslide suddenly struck the southwestern border. Transportation and communication were completely cut off, resulting in heavy casualties. Their hospital urgently formed a medical rescue team to head to the disaster area. Sarah signed up without hesitation and went as the team leader. When she arrived via helicopter and landed in the devastated disaster zone, it felt as though she had returned to Wenchuan 5 years ago. Mud, rubble, crying, and groaning. She didn't have time to think and immediately threw herself into the intense rescue efforts. There were too many wounded and a severe shortage of medical supplies. They performed surgeries nonstop for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep. Everyone was pushed to their limits. Just when she was about to collapse, a heavily equipped Special Forces unit descended from the sky. The man leading them stood tall and straight like a pine tree. He was covered in mud, his face painted with camouflage grease, revealing only a pair of familiar, falcon-like sharp eyes. It was Luke. As their eyes met, 1,000 words dissolved into silence. He had lost weight and gotten tanner. His eyes were bloodshot, yet they were still as bright as ever. He took large strides toward her and stopped just one step away. "I'm back," he said, his voice terribly hoarse. Her tears broke like a shattered dam in that moment. Ignoring everything else, she threw herself into his arms and hugged him tightly. His body was stiff for a second, but he quickly returned the embrace with force, hugging her so tightly it felt as though he wanted to press her into his very bones and blood. "I'm sorry for making you worry," he said in a low voice near her ear. She buried her face into his chest, which smelled of gunpowder and sweat, and shook her head desperately. "Welcome home," she choked out. Around them arose the good-natured laughter of his comrades. "Whoa, our Captain Luke, the Iron Tree, is finally blooming. Hello, sister-in-law." Above this chaotic rubble, on the edge between life and death, Sarah felt the warmth and security of a home for the very first time. She knew that the person she had been waiting for had come back. After the rescue mission ended, they returned home together, the home that belonged to him and her. He told her about his thrilling, soul-stirring experiences over the past 3 months, going undercover, pursuits, gunfights, and narrow escapes from death. He said that in the most dangerous moments, the only belief that kept him alive was the text message she had sent him. "Stay safe. I will wait for you to come back." "Sarah," he held her hand. His eyes were more serious than ever before. "In the past, I fought for my country. From now on, I will fight for my country, and also for you. My life is yours. My heart is yours, too." She looked at him and smiled. "Luke, I don't want your life. I just want you to come back safely every time you go on a mission." He smiled as well, leaned down, and kissed her. This time, she didn't pull away. They held a grand make-up wedding. At the ceremony, Luke's grandfather couldn't stop grinning from ear to ear. Carter and a bunch of brothers from the Special Forces got Luke completely drunk. Wearing a pure white wedding dress and looking at everything before her, Sarah felt like it was all a dream that started in mud and gloom, and finally led to light and warmth. Later, she heard that Emily had married an ordinary worker. They argued every day over daily necessities, and the grind of life quickly wore away all her former glamour. As for Robert, he applied for medical parole several times from prison, but was rejected every time. However, none of this had anything to do with Sarah anymore. She had her own life, her own career, and her own lover. Luke would still go out to execute various dangerous missions, and she would still race against the Grim Reaper on the operating table. They spent little time together and much time apart, but their hearts were tightly linked. He was a hero defending the country. She was an angel saving lives. They were comrades, lovers, and most importantly, the brightest beam of light in each other's lives. They protected their country in their own respective ways, and they also protected their small family. Perhaps this was the most beautiful form a military marriage could take.
So satisfying, right? Sarah proves that endless compromise only invites disrespect. Your true worth comes from your independence and dignity. Walking away from a toxic environment is exactly how you make room for those who truly value you. What did you think of her choice? Drop a comment, like, and subscribe. See you next time!